Okay, we're between storms here in England, stopped raining, and I've got a day off homeschooling. I'm going to give it go welding this 280SL here. Never done any welding before, and to give me some inspiration, my wife bought me this t-shirt here for my birthday. We don't have any power down in the garage, so we're going to be using this Ecoflow Delta battery here to run the MIG welder. And we're going to have a go at butt welding and also some spot welding, using some spot weld hole punch here to punch the holes out, and also some special spot weld pliers as well, and possibly even a spot weld nozzle. So let's have a look at what we've got to weld on this car. We're going to have a go at cutting out this rusty section here with the Dremel, and then welding a new piece in. Now this is actually a flange here, so we can't cut any further than these lines, otherwise we'll be cutting into the panel next door. Ideally what you do is you drill holes in the corner so that when you cut to the corner you'd have a nice rounded corner, better for welding, and also there's no chance that you'd kind of get cross cuts, but we don't have any drill bits here, so we're just going to give it our best shot as is. Use this little piece of plastic here to make a template. Oops. Do you want to move it? Should just be able to cut around that now. So I draw around it first, and then cut that out with an angle grinder. Fit that panel. This is just a really strong neodymium magnet that's holding it in place, so we're flush on this side. We've just got to trim a tiny little bit on this side here. What we're going to do is butt weld that in. I'm not going to do what they've done here. What most people do is normally just stick a panel over and patch that like that. I just don't like that at all. This is not something you'll ever see because it will be behind the inner wheel arch section, but I want to get into the habit of making neat butt welds, grinding them down. But before we do that, we're just going to treat the back of that panel with some primer, some weld through primer to try and protect it from the back. We've cut up the patch to fit. All we're going to do now is use some of this Bilt Hamber Etchweld. This is a weld through etch primer. Just spray the back of that. We'll leave that overnight to dry, and then we'll weld that in. We're going to earth it to the side of the car here. I hope that's going to work okay. We're going to have a go at grinding down those welds and see how well we got on. But there's no amount of YouTube tutorials or books you can read that will ever teach you how to weld. At some stage you've just got to actually do it, live with your mistakes and try and learn from them. We're going to have a go at welding up this hole here. So we've cut out the metal template just using the plastic trick. We've sprayed the back of it with etch welding. The only difference on this repair is that it's going to be welded to a flange here. So we've put etch weld on the inner seam here. And what we're going to do is we're going to punch out two little holes here. And we're going to basically be spot welding that piece there on and butt welding it down the sides. So we're going to be using these spot weld hole punch to make our holes. Now this is 18 gauge steel here. I've never tried using a hole punch on 18 gauge steel before, so we'll see how that goes. Okay, so this hole punch will punch holes through 18 gauge steel, and it punches the hole through without leaving any burrs or anything, which is quite good. Obviously car panels are not 18 gauge steel. This is thicker. This car panels will be 20 gauge or 22 gauge even, so you won't have the same problem punching through that. But the repair patch we've got is 18 gauge steel. The only disadvantage of the hole punch method is it puts the hole relatively close to the edge of the metal, Ideally you would want it slightly further in certain applications, in which case you could just use a 5mm drill bit. So we've marked our 2 holes. We're just going to use the hole punch now to punch those holes in. We've got 2 perfectly punched holes. They are closer to the edge than I'd like them, but we'll just have to see how we get on with that. Now the idea behind these spot weld pliers is that the back of the pliers has got a copper plate, so if you had a hole there and you wanted to weld on, if you had 2 holes through the metal, you could basically fill up the 2 holes with weld and the weld wouldn't stick to the copper plate. The other advantage of that copper plate is it will take the heat away, so even if you don't have 2 holes there, but a very thin piece of metal, which this flange here is, it'll hopefully help us avoid burning through. And the advantage is of the spot weld pliers, it allows you to put a special spot weld nozzle right in between them. Now a spot weld nozzle is just a nozzle that screws onto your MIG welder, hopefully. This one actually doesn't fit our MIG welder, so we will have to modify it. And it fits, you touch it on the metal, has those 2 metal prongs, so you're basically exactly the right distance away. You can set that up and then just hit the MIG welder and you'll be straight in the middle of the hole. It's just slightly easier to do spot welds than having to hold the gun and lean it against something. So we'll be trying that out. As I mentioned earlier, we're going to be using the Ecoflow Delta battery pack. Now these are super duper expensive, I think about 14 or 1500 pounds, but in a place where you don't have any power, they are exceptionally useful, camper vans, etc., and this garage. Now several people have asked me, how long does it last when you're welding? And I've no idea, but let's put it to the test. I fully charged this, and the unique selling point of this unit is it reaches 80% of its charge in 20 minutes. So it's not like a car battery where you have to charge it overnight. You basically just plug it in and it charges up really quickly. It has 4 standard power sockets and various USB and lightning things in the front, but we're interested in the power sockets in the back. So we've got 100% of the charge today, and we're just going to be running the welder to weld up this patch here and this little patch down here, and possibly a little bit of dremeling as well to get rid of some of the rust. We've pretty much welded that bottom patch in, and we're on 95% on this battery. For this top repair, I'm just going to hold this in place with the spot weld pliers and see if we can spot weld that. I haven't got a spot weld nozzle attached yet because I've got to make some modifications, but when you're spot welding you basically need to turn the heat up on the welder because you're basically welding 2 bits of metal together. So on this Clark welder we're going to keep the wire speed the same. We're just going to put that onto number 2 for the spot weld. We finished welding for the day and we used about 19% of the battery, and that allowed us to weld in this top section here and this lower section. We've just got one more section to repair on that, and then that will be ready for priming and seam sealing. We got the spot weld hole punch from these guys here on eBay. Cost us £13.99 delivered, and they will come in handy when we start to do the floor pans, the lower footwell kick panel, and also some of the other wheel arch repair panels. The spot weld pliers or plug weld pliers came from eBay from these guys here. They cost £26.51. They're quite expensive, but I only have 1 set of mole grips and I thought I'd treat myself as it's just been my birthday. I've mentioned it before, the Etchweld is a self-etching weld through primer, quite a unique product from Bilt Hamber. We use the rust removal crystals from those guys and they've been excellent. £10.95 a can. You need to add VAT on that and delivery as well. Just in case anyone out there is interested, the battery which we're using to run the MIG welder and various other power tools is the Ecoflow Delta. Not cheap, £1,400 in the UK, much cheaper in America, as most things are. But as I say, that's proved excellent. And if you ever go camping or you're expecting a power cut or anything like that, that'll certainly come in useful.